Hey, folks. Thank you for stopping by Kaiser's Castle. Hopefully, everything's going well with you today. I'm getting some feedback. I hope that you are all ready to sit down on my big orange couch. Grab yourself a coffee, tea, soda, or adult libation. It's the witching hour of midnight, and me and Baz have gotten together intercontinentally, and we're going to discuss Halloween. It comes. And with that being said, hey Baz, how's it going, brother?
Yeah, not so bad, brother. It's been quite a while since I've been on one of your shows. Obviously, been busy with work and just life in general. We've been trying to catch up for quite a while, so here we are. I've got a quick sort of hour, so you know what I mean. We were on about doing this around about Halloween time, and yeah, so it's good to be back on your show, brother.
Oh yeah, brother. That was always the plan to do a Halloween show. Here's something that to get this party started. Give a story up that you saw in your particular area that was spooky. Ooh.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you spend quite a while in old buildings and old places, old establishments, after a certain amount of time, you're gonna actually experience something that is normal, or paranormal, subnormal, whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean? It's yeah. So look, I spent quite a long time in Germany back in the 90s as part of the British Army on the Rhine, um, like a lot of the American military did. Spent quite a long time in Germany because of the old threat from the east.
Oh yeah, you
Um,
always had North Ag, Northern Army Group, and South Tag, which was Southern Army Group, and North Ag was English, Dutch, and Germans. South Ag was Americans and Germans. Yeah, I remember those days. Mine was
yeah,
the Cold War in the '80s.
yeah. So I mean, this was sort of like early to mid 90s. All well, in fact, throughout the 90s, really. I was there for about 6, 7 years in total. And obviously, you don't get brand new shiny barracks when you go to Germany. You're utilising the old barracks that have been around for quite some time. And obviously, the old barracks were occupied by German forces leading up to and during the Second World War. So, some of these buildings had seen a lot. Some of them still bore the marks of their previous owners, like the camp that we were at. The guardhouse at the guard room had the metal swastikas as part of the sort of the jail bars, the iron bars over the sort of over the guard room, and the swastikas at the bottom of them. And because these were listed buildings, and we were just sort of tenants, if you know what I mean. So we couldn't really start ripping down all these swastikas, so they were just covered up with sort of plywood and painted the same colour as the building. Um, I mean that the building where the camp that we were at no longer exists. It was all ripped down, and obviously because the Germans, once they were given back all this military infrastructure, this military sort of real estate, it still bore the sort of shameful marks of their past. So they ripped it down quite quickly, and it's sort of a business park now. Um, but where we were in Osnabrück, which is only about half an hour away from the Dutch border, obviously in West Germany. Um, and there was several camps and barracks within Osnabrück um, that were scattered all over. It wasn't sort of a clump of them together. They was like scattered all over the town. And we were in a place called Belfast Barracks. Now, the Belfast Barracks, as I understand, was an SS armoured battalion, um, because there was when we had renovations to the camp, we were allowed to renovate it because they put down a new washdown point because we were armoured infantry at the time. We had our warriors, our armoured fighting vehicles, and we needed an upgraded sort of washdown point. So when we got the German authorities to come in and start digging it all up, they actually found tunnels under our camp that led all the way down to another camp about a mile and a half away, called Roberts Barracks, which was down near the sort of railhead.
Right, where they would load your armored vehicles to like go somewhere or something.
What's it in this? No. These tunnels weren't for us. They were just found under the camp when they excavated,
Right.
sort of, for a sewer system, for a wastewater system for our
Oh,
washdown
okay.
point.
Okay, gotcha.
When they dug down, a lot of the ground collapsed, and when they found some tunnels leading down there that nobody had known about, and apparently it was quite eerie down there. Anyway, so it was a really old camp that we were in, and I remember I think we'd just come back from Canada. Yes, we'd just come back from Canada, and everybody was sort of given like a 4-day pass, like a long weekend. So most of the guys back then used to just jump in the cars and drive back to the UK. There wasn't many people left on camp. Now, I was saving up basically my time off. So I'd spoke to my sergeant major and said, can I keep my 4-day pass and bolt it onto the end of my leave, which was summer leave coming up? And he was like, no, not a problem. So there was sort of only me and my friend in the entire accommodation block. Now we were C Company 9 Platoon and I was B Company 6 Platoon, so we were the completely opposite ends of the block, and we were the only people in there. And these blocks house a couple of hundred people. Anyway, it was quite late at night. I was laid in my bed. I think I was watching TV. Now, these are the days before DVD and all that stuff. I had one of those TV video combos. It's not a little portable TV, but it's got an inbuilt video VCR. So I was laid in bed watching that, and someone knocked on my door in my accommodation. So obviously I shouted, come in, thinking, who's this? It's late at night, there's nobody in the block. I just thought it was my friend, which was weird because he usually used to walk on in. Anyway, so there was no answer. So I was like, for fuck's sake, I thought my door might be locked. So I got up, checked my door, it was open. I had a look in the corridor. Nobody. Now, in the corridor, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rooms and sort of the ablutions, the toilets, and your normal like military ablutions, all tiled floor, tiled walls, tiled ceilings, open showers. The corridor was roughly about 30, 40 feet long, with a heavy, one way in, one way out. It had a heavy sort of fire door at the end of it. And this thing is so heavy and it's so old and so loud that you could wake the dead opening it. So I was in bed, heard this knock, got up, no one in the corridor, didn't hear any doors opening. I certainly didn't hear the fire door open, which was strange because I didn't register that first of all. Anyway, thought nothing of it. Someone's sort of obviously in the block with me. They've probably knocked on my door, then just walked on past and gone into their room, thinking it was one of the guys in my platoon. Anyway, so I get back into bed. No more than like a couple of seconds I get back into bed, there's another knock on my door. So I'm thinking, someone is now taking the piss out of me. So I get up, run to the door, open it, nothing. So I'm thinking, okay, they're in the room. Because you couldn't get into the ablutions from my room in that space of time I could get from bed to the door. So I go into the corridor, I check all the other doors, like which are opposite mine and next to mine, which you could probably get to in a couple of seconds. They're all locked. So I'm thinking, this is strange. Someone's obviously playing a practical joke. So what I did, I came in, closed my door, stood behind my door, nothing. Listened, like, with my ear to the door, nothing. I get halfway across my room to get back into a bed. There's another bang on the door. I literally turn around, sprint to the door, open it. Now, you would have only got literally 5-6 feet away from my door before I ripped it open and looked in the corridor, and there was just nothing there whatsoever. And at that point, I thought, this is strange. This is very strange because there's just nobody in the corridor. So that evening, I sort of closed my door, and because I lived in a 3-man room, but I was in a 3-man room by myself, I pulled one of the beds across the door because I just didn't know who it was. It was quite eerie. And when I told my friend about it the next day, because he lived obviously at the other end of the block, he didn't hear anything. He basically told me he's experienced that, like things like that before, and many of the other guys have, but no one just dares talk about it because we'll look fools. So that's one of the instances in one of these old German camps, which was quite eerie, and it was just one of many. But I remember that was sort of my initiation to the old hauntings of Belfast barracks, so to say. But there's been other times where other things have happened that have been even eerier, and and I've seen with my own eyes. And when you think, no, that didn't happen, when it didn't happen, but when there's someone standing next to you, seeing the exact same thing, not under the influence of alcohol, not under the influence of any drugs, obviously in the army, but when you're actually on patrol, on a security patrol, in a camp, and you go, have you seen that there? And someone looks and says, it's not you, it's me too, I'm seeing the exact same thing. And we go, what the actual fuck? So, in my last little tale there, I mentioned the tunnel running under our camp that went to another camp down near the railhead, which was called Roberts Barracks. And there was a regiment there, it was an artillery regiment. And this artillery regiment were away for quite a while. And for some reason, I can't remember because it was so long ago, some of us were sort of seconded to this artillery regiment to just do security patrols for them. I can't remember why, or there was some reason. I think what it was, we'd just been mortared by the IRA. The IRA just mortared us in Germany, in Osnabrück. And so security had gone up, so that was it. I remember the artillery being away in the UK on exercise manoeuvres for some reason, so they didn't have enough people to run all these security patrols. And we used to do what's called MPPs, which was mortar base plate checks, which was basically we'd patrol the perimeter of the camp, and then another sort of team would patrol the area outside of camp in a vehicle, looking at potential mortar base plate attack points, firing points, which for the British Army it was just second nature because we were always getting mortared by the IRA. It was just unheard of that it was happening in Germany at such a large scale because it was quite a big mortar. Anyway, I digress. So we were down on this Roberts Barracks, and we were moving down towards the railhead. Me and a friend of mine. He was actually one of the guys from the artillery. I knew him because we'd done some parachuting together out in Canada and then in Germany itself. So when he was on security detail, I actually was on the same time as him, so we sort of just teamed up. And Roberts Barracks was actually used in the Second World War for a number of reasons, because it was a main railhead that went into sort of eastern Germany and further north towards Poland. All the rail was interlinked. It was used for a lot of sort of a lot of troop manoeuvres, troop movement, materiel movement, tanks and armour and logistics and things like that. But it was also used as well for moving what the Germans called undesirables. Your Jews, your Polish gypsies, disabled people, gays, political dissidents, whatever they wanted to name these people. And they were kept in sort of a big sort of like block, sort of a building at the end of the railhead. Now, the only thing that was left standing of that at that time was basically the shell of the building itself. It was probably about 4 stories high, if not maybe 4 or 5 stories high. Obviously, at one point, it all had different floors where all these people were kept. Now it's just like a big, open, empty warehouse. It's derelict. You know, it's got holes in the ceiling and things like that. So there's no actually floors in it. It's just a shell of a building. Anyway, we were walking down towards it, and we were chatting shit. I can't remember what we were speaking about, because obviously it's 20 odd years ago. And we saw movement down near the fence. So I stopped. I raised my rifle. I looked through the scope of my rifle down towards there. I can't remember. It was nothing. I know something that caught our eye. Anyway, so he said, he'll have a smoke. So we got a smoke out. We just stood behind sort of a couple of shipping containers, and was smoking away. I was chatting to him, and I could see something in his face. He just stopped what he was doing. His cigarette was in his hand, and he was just like staring up at the building with a frown. Anyway, so I look at him. I was thinking, "What's wrong, mate? Am I boring you?" He went, "No, look." I turn around and I can't see what he's looking at. First of all, I was just looking at this building. This building's about 30, 40 metres away. And then he went, "No, look, up there, top floor, left-hand side, right-hand side window." I look up there, and there is plain as day silhouettes of people standing there looking down at us. And now, because obviously this is a derelict building, it's got holes in the roof and stuff like that, and it was quite light out, as in the moon. There was a lot of ambient light because I remember there was a really bright moon, and it sort of like shone from sort of behind the building through the building, and you could see plain as day. There was two sort of adult figures and a child figure in this top right window, and it could not have been a human, purely because there was no floors in this place. That window, you're looking at 100 feet off the ground, but there was nothing in there. All the floors had been stripped through, so it was just the shell of the building. So if it was a human, they were levitating 100 feet in the air. And I was thinking, it's just a figure of our imagination. And then these figures moved from left to right and disappeared. I looked at him, he looked at me, and we were like, we have just seen that. And he said, 2 people and a kid. I was like, yeah. And they moved to the right. He went, yes. And they've gone. And he said, how was them there? So we went to the building just to check. Anyway, we got entry into it because you can actually just squeeze through one of the actual broken down doors. Looked up, nothing. It's just damp, old rafters and things like that. Anyway, we went back to the guardhouse, and we had these things. It was like mainly ex-soldiers do it, especially the older ones that just want a bit of pocket money, like as they go towards retirement. We have called MPGS, which is Military Provost Guard Service, which is the guys that check the passes. Like you have some like MPs on the gate in some like American military bases, where we have MPGS. And basically, what these were doing, were checking passes and stuff like that. And we went back to the guard room, and he goes, "Oh, where you guys been?" So I'm just doing an MVP check down there, the railhead and things like that. He said, "But we've seen something weird." And he said, "What's that?" I said, "Oh, in the derelict building at the end." And he sort of just smiled, gave us a knowing smile, and that told me 1,000 things, that he'd seen this type of stuff before. He sort of nodded. He goes, "Go and get yourself a cup of tea, guys." So that was just a couple of the instances that I've like been through where it's been strange out in Germany.
Oh, I feel you, brother. I mean, I've already told this story several times. I'm not going to get back into it. It'll come on my Halloween show. But it was about the ghost I saw in Japan. Kind of different but similar to your last story. And of course, you guys will hear about it on the Halloween show, which should be this Sunday. And it'll be coming probably either live from Kate's, and I'm going to be on her show too, on PSN Radio Network. It's Kate's Campfire, and on PSN it's just Kastle Talk Radio. So yeah, that actually got me some goosebumps a couple of times, my friend. That was a good one. I remember one thing, and I didn't remember it until I had reposted the same story, except I was real nervous talking to Art Bell for the first time, and I told the story that I'm going to retell at Kate's, and of course I haven't been nervous. I believe I've told the same story on this channel at one point, maybe last Halloween if memory serves. So if you guys want to hear the story, and you'll hear it again, you can go find it on this channel, Sword Point 9 on YouTube. But anyways, my buddy had heard the first telling of it, and I stated, I didn't think I'd ever seen anything like that before. And of course, me and him worked together in the Gulf War, and we just happened to be talking on Skype. It might have been Facebook Messenger, how you can call in. I think that's how. He goes, "Bro, don't you remember?" And I was like, "What?" And we had done something. I think we'd just gotten done. If memory serves, it was a couple weeks after 2 guards. They were playing chicken or something. Nobody can figure out what they were doing. but they both were like, I don't know, snap shooting at each other or something without, they thought there was no bullets in it or whatever. I don't know how the hell it happened. CID never really, they were inconclusive as to it, but both of them were dead. They shot each other. So it was just something weird. And they were, a distance apart. They weren't like right next to each other, so maybe they were snapping in on a human target. I don't know what the flip was going through their mind. But anyways, we had this one funny MP. He would always do this for the OOD when the OOD was coming. The OOD, this was over on the flight line. He would jump down and half rack the shotgun, which means no round go. Half rack. You're not actually loading anything, but it sounds like you just racked the gun because you just slide it back a little bit and bring it up. And of course, the OODs would all, you just lock and loaded on me, and he'd be like, "No, sir. There's no round in there. I just half racked it." And the OOD invariably would pull it back. This is just a funny story. And then see, there's no round, but he's about to cycle it in. Well, normally, what would happen is, the OOD normally would just turn the gun sideways and pull it out and put it back in the mag. Well, this one idiot OOD actually slid it forward and fired it himself like a moron. Anyways, so we came down for that one. And it was just a negligent discharge. Nobody was hurt. Nothing was really done about it, as it shouldn't be. The OOD just got his PP smacked. Officer on duty, and officer of the day, however you want to put it. Yeah. And I don't know the English terminology for it, but anyways, the OOD was a moron. So we're coming down there, and this place is in Margarita, the flight line area, and our buddy was working the gate of flight line because MPs also secure the flight lines for the Marine Corps. That's an additional duty because of what we call Air Base Ground Defense, ABGD, Air Base Ground Defense. Anyway, so we're walking down through there just trying to look for the bullet or something, the shotgun round that had been expelled. And because we were using not buckshot, not double-aught, but we were using slugs in that area because of the aircraft. You had to have a better aimed round, a single round.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to find out where it went. Anyways, we're just walking along and couldn't find it. It was nighttime, and we were like, well, we'll come back here in the daytime. And we stopped at a point, and we're in the grass now. And along the flight line, bruh, we could hear footsteps. And it's a bright night. And we both look over our shoulders, and we're both looking, and the footsteps are still going, man. And there is nobody anywhere near us. We're not moving, plus we're in the grass. And we're just like, whoa. Both of the hair on the back of our necks just went, oop.
Yeah.
And we go up to that guy. It's similar to what you said with your guy who was out at the little gate. And we're like, that was interesting. Sounded like somebody walking. I don't know, maybe a dog or something. And he just laughed. He goes, that happens all the time out here, man. He goes, nobody knows what it is. It's not, I don't think it's a ghost or anything. And of course we didn't think it was, but it was just eerie when you hear or see something and you can't explain it. The unexplained, I think, is more heart
the
pounding.
accepted term.
Yeah. It could be anything. It could have been, a tumbleweed rolling across the flight line or something. But who knows? I don't think it's tumbleweed at Pendleton. Maybe it could have been, but it's more likely to have tumbleweed out at 29 Palms. But yeah, that was kind of weird. It was just unexplained. So that's the only reason why I brought that up. I think it's kind of kooky and fitting for this show.
Yeah, it's almost like you don't want to say the G word to anybody. You're like, nobody wants to say it first. You know what I mean? Was it a ghost? Shut up, you dickhead! It's fucking ghost. Nobody wants to say that word because you're gonna seem a fool. But everybody's thinking the same thing. What is that? There's no other explanation. It's the unexplained, you know.
Right.
And I think that's what's more eerie about it. Especially if there's an element of history to it as well.
Yep.
You know, like the old Nazi barracks, the old sort of like railhead holding sort of warehouse building.
Yep.
There's that, because obviously the people that were held in that building, you know, they were sent probably to the deaths. You know what I mean? In places like Dachau and Belsen, Sobibor and places like that. So it's there's that added sort of tragedy and sorrow and loss to it all as well, and it all feeds into unrestful spirits and things like that didn't pass naturally. It was just a time of terror, of pain, of suffering, of sadness. So it sort of lingered in the living realm, you know. So yeah, there's elements of the unexplained all over, and sometimes at like the most unexpected times and things like that. And some of it you put down to practical jokes, but then some of it is just the unexplained. And again, like I say, in Germany, we used to have a lot of it happening. I remember we were in a place called Sannenlager. It's in northern Germany. I do understand that some of the US guys used it on occasion, especially for sports parachuting and things like that. The sports parachuting centre was there, like the British Army one, that the American guys used to use quite frequently. But it's also a large range complex, and obviously it's got like the ammo bunkers there. And again, these are from Jesus, like the 1920s, 30s. Were used in the Second World War all the way through.
Maybe could have been from the First World War too, because they did rehab a lot of those caserns.
Yeah, possibly. Anyway, these ammo bunkers are the sort of like bunkers in a hill. You know what I mean? Where they're actually man-made sort of hills, big concrete bunkers with sort of earth over the top of them, the mounds.
Ammo supply points. Yep.
Yeah, and obviously they're in a line of maybe 3 or 4, and then there'll be 3 or 4 opposite them. You know, and I remember it was winter. But there was no snow on the ground. I just remember it being really crisp and cold. So it was like dark most of the time, especially that it was surrounded by a forest as well, in the middle of nowhere. And I think there was about 4 or 5 of us that were on guard duty there. I can't remember. I think we'd been naughty boys, and someone had said, right, you can stay there over the weekend. Because what the battalion did it was only 45 minutes away to an hour from where our main barracks were. So what they'd do is we'd go down there during the week for the range package. Then on the weekend, instead of staying down there, they just went, yeah, everybody just can fuck off back up to Osnabrück or do whatever you want. But I think we'd be naughty boys. I think we'd gone out drinking at some point that we shouldn't have gone out drinking, just like soldiers do, and picked up extra duties. And one of these was to what we call stag on, as in pull guard duty over the weekend. And yeah, I remember it very, very clearly because it was just it was nice to be there, especially if all the guys were doing range packages and stuff like that, because if you were pulling security, you weren't having to do the range packages, like running up and down the ranges and all stuff like that. You were basically just chilling out, just pulling guard duty on this ammo bunker, and so it was quite relaxed, quite serene. You were there with your friends and maybe the lance corporal that was heading up the team, or a corporal. Obviously, your lance corporals are specialists, so it was quite chilled out. Anyway, this I remember this one evening. It was a Saturday night, and it was around about 8-9 o'clock at night. And the way this thing was laid out, you had like this little guard hut, and it was one of the very old German guard huts. No, it's like got the black and white chevrons on. It was one of those, and it had all graffiti in from like 1939, 41, 43, all these German names where each German soldier's been sat there at some point throughout history, and then obviously from sort of the 50s onwards, sort of like it was like British names in there, as the British Army sort of took over that sort of range complex. And so it was good to actually sit in there and look at history over the years and things like that. Just all these names, thinking, I wonder if that soldier survived the war and things like that. And the gate was right next to it. And then maybe about 30 metres away was like the little guard room, like the guard house where the guard would stay, the guard would sleep. In there was just like it was sort of two rooms. Like the front room was actually the guard room where the guard commander would sit. And then in the back was where the guys would be sleeping. And it was only a really small place. And then there was just this long straight, it was almost like a runway, would just stretch off into the distance, running away from it. And obviously on each side of this sort of road would be these ammo bunkers. And I remember at the halfway point, there was one of those old field phones, the wind-up ones.
Oh yeah.
And at the very, one of the hardwired ones.
Yep.
And at the very end bunker, there would be another one. Now, there's only one way in and one way out of this place. And obviously being an ammo bunker, it's quite well secured, it's quite well defended. It's got like razor wire topped fences, and the razor wires on either side of the fence at the bottom, you know what I mean? So there's like quite a lot of concertina wire. You can't just climb over one of these things and get into a bunker. And obviously because of its seclusion in the middle of nowhere, what they've done is they'd put the motion sensors on the fences as well. So if the fence shakes to a certain degree, an alarm goes off in the guard room. Anyway, and then so there's 4 phones in the entire complex. There's one in the guard room, one in the guard box, one halfway down this road, and one at the very end of the road. Obviously, so if there's an incident or something at the very end, ammo bunker, which is it's roughly about 3/4 of a mile away, then somebody would be able to wind that little thing. It'd ring in the guard room. Okay, there's been an incident. Get an ambulance. Get the fire brigade. Whatever.
Right.
Anyway, so we were all in the thing. We were watching a movie or something, and then the phone rings. Lance Corporal, I can't remember who it was at the time, picked the phone up. I went, "What's up, mate?" Thinking it was the dude on the gate, 20 meters away. And then I just remember I looked over to him, and he went, "What's up, mate?" As in repeated himself. And then I look and see the guy standing outside in the middle of the road. You know what I mean? He's just standing up. He's looking up at the stars or whatever he's doing. And I'm thinking, that's not him. Anyway, so I nudged him and I pointed as if to say, look, he's out there. It's not him.
Right.
And he sort of looked at me and his eyes were like quite wide. And he put the phone down. He went, that was fucking weird. I said, what? He said, if it's not him, who is it? And then he told me there's only 4 phones on this entire complex. One here, one out there with him, but obviously he's not in his guard box, one halfway down and one at the very end. And he said somebody was on the end of it, he said, because he could hear the wind like blowing over the speaker. Anyway, and he looked at me, he looked at one of the other guys, he goes, jump in the Land Rover and drive down. So we were like, fuck. So we jumped in the Land Rover, drove down, lights on full, got down there, nothing. The handset's back on its thing. So we sort of like drove onto the grass and around. And I sort of weaved our way around the old bunkers. There's nowhere to hide down there because it's all quite open. You're either standing on the grass, standing on the road, or on top of one of the bunkers. So
right.
we got our massive torches, like the big shark eye torches, just illuminating the entire area. Nothing. So I said to the lad that I had with me, come on, let's drive round the sort of fence line to make sure the fence line's intact. So we drove round, everything's perfect. Got back to the guard room. As we got out of the Land Rover, I heard the ringing of the bell in the guard room.
Right.
And as I was walking up to it, I'm looking into the guard room now through the window, and I see the guard commander dude pick up the phone and say, like, his name, you know what I mean? Or Lance Corporal Smith, you know what I mean? And
oh yeah,
he looks at me again, and he shakes his head. I turn around, and the gate guy is now like looking at us with a puzzled look on his face, going, "What's happening?" And he points now, go, and he just as he had the full handset in his hand. We jumped in the Land Rover, pegged it down there, and now we could see. Well, obviously, we have our headlights on, and I just got the shark torch. I wasn't driving at the time. I had the shark torch on, and I shone it exactly at the same point where the phone is halfway down. Now there's no cover around this thing. It's basically a phone. It's like it's strange. It's like a pole, and it's got like a little cover of the phone. Not
Right,
like a miniature. It's like a miniature sentry box, but it's got the phone in it. And there's no one standing there, and we get there, and the phone's off its hook. You know what I mean? Just swinging, and we were like, "What the fuck?" So we put it back on, get to the top, go out to the guard room, get down there. I would say about half hour, 45 minutes later, rings again, and at this point we had a patrol out. So we have the Motorola radios as well. You see, if you're on patrol, so. He jumps on the Motorola radio, the handset, and he goes like fucking zero. Where this is zero, fucking 1-1. Where are you? And they actually said we were between bunkers 5 and 6, which was past the midway phone, but it was sort of like midway before the end phone, if you know what I mean. So they were in between the midway phone and the end phone in those bunkers there. And he went, shiny torches at both of those phones. And these phones, I would say, were about 200, 300 metres apart. Anyway, so the guys shone the torches and looked through the scopes of the rifles. We had the ×4 scope then, the SUSAT.
Right.
And they went, there's nobody at both phones. Anyway, the guard commander is on the Motorola radio going, I'm on the phone with whoever it is now. And the guys were going, there is nobody there. And they went down to the end one. It was the end one, this one, and the end one was off the hook. Yeah, it was eerie as fuck. Absolutely eerie as fuck. And it wasn't for a good couple of years. I remember regaling this story to somebody who'd spent some time in Germany, and they said the exact same thing. In fact, I lie. I lie. We were on about, it was a conversation very much like this, where we were on about like the paranormal and things like that. And it was just about in Germany. And we're on about things that happened in Senelager, because quite a lot had happened around there. I remember one of the guys going, oh yeah, I remember I was stagging on one of the ammo bunkers at some point, and the phone kept ringing. But it was ringing in the sentry box at this time and not the guard room. And we were like, fuck off, that exactly happened to us. And when we spoke about the actual bunkers, there's a couple of bunkers, ammo like sort of bunkers, on Senelager sort of training area, and when we actually described the one where we were at, it was the exact same one. So obviously there's something going on, or something happened there at some point. And obviously soldiers being soldiers, they always add their bit to it. And it was like, oh yes, it was an SS soldier that was felt guilty of his crimes because he killed too many people, and he was sent there to sort of like a bit of rest and recuperation because he was injured in the war and he couldn't handle his past, and had basically sat in the sentry box and put one through the roof of his mouth, and his ghost haunts that place to this day. You know, in all the bullshit that gets tied along with it, but you just feed into it. You just feed. Oh yeah. You just feed into it because it adds that element of mystery and
mystique.
Yeah, the spook.
Yeah, the spookiness.
It adds to the spook.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a couple of instances. I mean, there's been instances sort of outside the military as well.
Well,
that I've sort of come across.
Your last story, you could actually say that you had the first, or that phone had the first now spoken about electronic voice phenomenon. You know how the ghost hunters will take all that high-tech gear and have a tape playing, and they'll hear some people talking on it. When it's a blank tape, they just press record. And sometimes they can do it with digital ones too, but that was a good one, man. That one was a good story.
Yeah. I just remember it was every time that phone rang, we all sort of like looked at each other. But it got to the point where we were doing it. If you were sitting in the guard box, you'd ring it, leave the phone off the hook, then just stand outside. So everyone would like pick the phone up, would turn around and sort of like look at the guard box and see you standing outside. Then they'd be like, "Oh no, it's the ghost down the way." it was just as then started playing tricks on each other because of the phenomenon
Because of
that had
that,
happened.
yeah.
Yeah, the phenomenon that happened, and obviously, but then that became gospel. Then, oh, it happened to me, it happened to me, it happened to me, and it was happening to everybody. Then, until people were going, no, that was just me leaving the phone off the hook. Yeah, it was funny. It was funny, but it's also another sort of a spooky one that to this day, both me and my mum can't explain. Can't explain. Now, my mum's sort of a very, when I say spiritual person, I don't mean in a religious sense. I mean she believes in spirits. She believes in she's my mum's a pagan. She believes in like the spirits of nature and stuff like that. And I remember I must have been about 12, 13 years old. I wasn't very old anyway. I went out walking with my mum one day. We were walking the dog, and we had this route that we always used to do, and this route goes through this sort of forest, and it goes into a place called Golden Grove. And now you walk down this path, and there's a nice stream at the bottom, and it's got two little footbridges that cross over like two bits of the stream, but converge in sort of like at one point. And we're walking up there, and me being 12, 13, I might not have even been that old. I was just being a young kid, I mean, like with a stick smacking a stone or something like that. And I was ahead of my mum by about 20, 30 metres. Anyway, I got to the top of this path that runs down like this little like slope, like of a hill that goes into the centre of the woods. And when it goes down to these two bridges. Now, remember at these two bridges, there's like usually like a little rope swing and stuff like that. And I was just pottering around like 20, 30 feet in front of my mum. And my mum shouted. I just remember going, Baz, stop. And I sort of turned around and I looked at my mum. And she had this weird look on her face that I'd never seen before. Anyway, she just went, stay there. Anyway, she came up to me. And the dog was just sitting at my feet, just looking down the slope. And that's when I thought, that's strange, because this dog is like, it was a gun dog, so it was really active. And then my mum just put the dog on his lead and she went, just stand behind me. Anyway, we walked down this track, and this track's a good 200 metres. You can't actually see the bridges. You can't actually see the bridges from the top of the track. Anyway, we walked down this track, and we got to the bottom of the track. And just as we got there, there was a policeman at the bottom of the bridge with his hand over his mouth, looking up. And this guy had hung himself from the bridge using just some twine. No, what we call baler twine, what you do, hay bales. It's right. Like this blue plastic sort of rope. Anyway, just chucked it round his neck and sort of stepped off this bridge. No, it's only about 13, 14 feet high, but it'd been enough to step off the bridge and snap his neck. So, but my mum felt that there was a disturbance. You know what I mean? A disturbance in the force.
Yeah.
My mum felt this disturbance a good couple of 100 metres away, that she knew that there was something wrong at the bottom of here. And then the policeman had turned around. Obviously, someone had found him, phoned the police, and the policeman had said, right, stay at the top of the track to the person. And then the policeman had obviously come down because he was probably the first on the scene, like first law enforcement officer on the scene. Then obviously you got the CSI guys involved and stuff like that. But obviously because it was so early in the discovery of this scene that they'd not blocked off the top path, which is not many people walk up there because it's a very rural area. It's in the middle of the countryside where I grew up.
Right.
And so the police officer had said to my mum, where have you just come from? My mum went, just up there. And he said, just keep the young lad, keep the little lad just away. But obviously I'd seen this fucking dude hanging there. But it was just, the fact that I'd seen a guy hanging there, because I was young, I didn't really understand suicide and stuff like that. You know, I didn't really sort of take that in. What I took in the most was the look on my mum's face. Like 5 or 6 minutes earlier, that she knew there was something wrong down there, but she couldn't put a finger on it. And then we had to walk down that way anyway. And then she obviously walked down there and we'd seen this guy had taken his own life. You know, it was just strange how my mum knew that there was something wrong there, and she can't understand it to this day.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? We often speak about it. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, Mum, do you remember when we were walking? And she went, yes. She was like, I don't know. She said it was like someone had just grabbed her by the back of the neck, but really, really sort of like icy cold. Well, not a painful grab, just put the hand on the back of her neck. You know, she said she did. She just felt just everything wrong there. Yeah, so there's, I lived, I was born and brought up in a place called Whitby on the North Yorkshire coast in England. And Whitby goes back to, Jesus, before medieval times. You know, it's a very, very old place. A lot of the buildings are still very old. The pub I used to drink in was built in the beginning part of the 1600s, you know, so that's the type of sort of some of the buildings in Whitby. It's got an abbey there it was built in, I think it was like 900 AD. Vikings raised it in the 1300s, I think, or around that time. So it's a really old place, and there is all sorts of paranormal stuff there. Whitby was the actual place where the book Dracula was written. So if any of the listeners have read the book Dracula, his ship, the ship that Dracula came in on was actually shipwrecked off Whitby, and Dracula swam ashore in the form of a big black dog.
Right.
So Whitby is full of paranormal stuff, and you ask anybody in Whitby that's spent any of the time there, and they will tell you 1,000,001 stories. That's probably a show for another day. Well, Whitby ghost stories.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Go onto YouTube, go onto Google, and there's actually millions of them. There's actually a couple of organised walks in Whitby called ghost walks, where one of the locals who's been doing it for a long time, he dresses up in sort of like old English dress, and he takes you around, and he shows you all parts of the old ghost walks and stuff like that. And he even said, because he's been doing it for so long, he said even on some of the ghost walks, there's things happened on them that no one could explain. You know,
right?
It's strange.
Well,
it's
just
a
like
strange old place.
That's just like where I grew up. I grew up in our closest town was Darbydale. I think it was 5-6 miles from the trailer park. And this is teenage years now. You know, excuse me, middle school to teenage years. Anywho, there's a place in Darbydale, and its actual name is New Pennsylvania Cemetery, but its name has always been in that area, Woollyburger. And there's a hill across from it, a big hill. And this guy was European. He came over and literally had his house, which was, they say, a castle, and most of the homes in Darbydale that are along the river, because we have the Darby Creek, but it's like a river. Anyways, the Darby Creek goes through it, and you can't see them anymore because they finally hauled all of them off. But there were pylons as far back as I remember, since I was a little kid. You know, not a little kid, but what would I have been? 8th grade, 7th grade. So I don't know how old I was. 6th, 7th grade, somewhere in there. We used to go swim down there, and you'd always see these. They were actual like pylons, and that's where they say the castle stood. And like I say, I've got a good story about it, but I'll wait until Halloween to let everybody know the 2 stories I have. One's actually happened near Woollyburger and Woollyburger Cemetery, and the other one, the state owns all the property around Woollyburger, the state of Ohio, and they call it like B12 or B10 or something like that. I can't remember the actual name of it. And they used to, back in the 80s, they would let farmers farm that land. Now they've let it all go back to grassland, with the whole green movement. They probably found snail darters or some shit.
Yeah.
And you always had these pull-ins where kids would go make out, or hunters would go and park to go hunt, or farm machinery would come to plow or to, pull the stuff up. And anyways, if you walk towards if you walk towards the road, which you'd be moving at a slight left angle, you'll walk into Woollyburger Cemetery. I've got pictures of that cemetery, and I will have them on that show when I do it. And the most fascinating thing about it, man, is that there was an event that happened there too, and that one will make people's hair stand on their heads. But both of them are real events. But man, it's just fascinating that all of the foundations, they say that. Here's what I will say: they say that they say the guy was like I don't know, a shapeshifter, whatever you want to call it. With the Indian lore, I'd prefer to say a shapeshifter instead of what he supposedly is. And I can't confirm or deny any of that, but I do know that strange stuff's afoot down there. That's the devil worshippers used to go there at night, and it would always get freaky. So, things people would see, like, this is a funny one that, I saw written about. I never saw it. And a buddy of mine had told me a similar story when we were young. That there was some woman walking down the road. Now, the story that I read said it was an Amish-looking woman. That's not what my buddy said. He said it was just a woman in a dress. And it was a summer night, so, women wear dresses. He's figuring the car broke down. She's heading into Darbydale to go get gas or have somebody help her. Pay phones for her, the only thing we had back then, not cell phones.
Yeah.
And so he pulls up, passes her up, pulls over, gets out of his car, and as he gets out, she's not there. And the same thing was on something somebody wrote about Woollyburger. So it's interesting. Yeah, you'll see Civil War soldiers buried there. It's an old cemetery, my friend, and it's just, and it really irritates me that people vandalize cemeteries.
Yeah.
And now the one thing I did know when I was looking something up one day, and it was when they were doing that thing where they hide shit and then you use your phone to try to find it. I was trying to figure out what geocaching was about, I think.
Yeah.
And it said points near me. And, I just typed in bullshit in Darbydale. And I guess somebody's geocached something out there. The grid coordinates came back to that cemetery. And I was like, so now they're digging places and storing stuff for geocaching. Okay, whatever. Whatevs. But yeah, man, it's that place at night, brother, at night in the autumn. I tell everybody, don't go there unless I go with you, because bad juju in that place. And I still have to take my son. He's always wanted to go. But yeah, that's a freaky place, bruh.
Freaky deaky.
Oh yeah.
Spooktacular.
It is spooktacular. Hey, you know what? Even in the evening time, because all the trees are real tall, and in the fall, matter of fact, I think I took some pictures of that, and I'll have that for the show that I do. I'll have those pictures. The sun, or the sun as it's going down, those trees just make lines, man. It's like prison bars on the ground. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah, there's a place in Whitby. It used to be a railway. It used to be the old railway that ran from Whitby to a place called Scarborough, which is 21 miles away. And basically, years and years and years ago, they ripped all the tracks up and all the sleepers and all the wooden sleepers. So now it's called the cinder track, or it's actually called the lines, but it's known to the local as the lines, the old railway lines. But its official name is the cinder track, but we all call it the lines. Now it's basically all old coal cinders, like loose cinders, I think over the past few years it's actually been renovated into a proper walking path. But back then it was just either the cinder track or the lines. And there's it runs past where me and my mum had come across that guy that had hung himself. It comes across a few other sort of places that are frequented back in the day by the old, inverted commas, the old devil worshippers, you know.
Right.
It was strange. There was sort of a teepee, a big wooden teepee built there. Basically, it was just straight logs piled up against each other that had created sort of a natural teepee.
Yep.
And no one could understand why this thing kept getting built. It kept getting knocked down, it kept getting built, knocked down. They'd always find like dead livestock in there, but where things like rituals had happened, you know what I mean, where they'd actually killed this animal, you know what I mean, there was signs of a ritual, there was different symbols and stuff like that on the stones outside, either in red paint or had been used animal's blood or actually carved into these things. It was just a weird place all along it. There was certain little places, and most of the locals that like sort of live around that area use that to like walk the dogs or walk along it or do some. Nowadays fitness is quite sort of like popular. People like jogging a lot more nowadays. But you ask any of the locals that have spent any of the time around the lines, and they'll all say if you're walking along the lines at night or really early in the morning, they've always, it's like a crunch because it's all old cinders, you see, the old path.
Right.
And you could hear someone, especially at night, because obviously sound travels further at night and it's a lot quieter. You can hear someone walking on the lines from a good 30, 40 metres away. And people that used to walk the dogs on there said they'd hear footsteps behind them. And it's straight. It's straight, if you know what I mean. Most of this thing is just straight, so you can see a good 300-400 metres to your front and to your rear. And they'd hear footsteps behind them, maybe 20, 30 feet. They'd turn around and still hearing the footsteps. There'd be nothing there, but they'd hear the... Yeah, it's a strange old place. I'd only sort of heard that once, and it was funny. I was with an old girlfriend, and we were walking from sort of like where she used to live. There was like obviously checking IDs back in the 90s wasn't as sort of stringent as it is now. So at like 14, 15, you could maybe sneak into one of the old country pubs for a quiet, you know what I mean, a sneaky underage pint.
Right.
Because obviously our ID laws here weren't as stringent as they were in the States. We don't get IDs as a kid. You know, we don't need IDs. Obviously, the laws have changed now. They're a lot more stringent.
No, I'll tell
Anyway,
you, when I was a kid, my grandfather used to send me and my buddy Jimmy over to the pub, and they would give us the bucket of beer. We'd pay them for it and walk it back to my grandfather. And I was like 5 years old, 5 or 6, you know, because they knew it was for what they used to call him Red, because he had red hair. But that's that's for real.
That element of trust. Like we filled my cigarettes. Like I remember my mum used to give me a note. There was a shop a few hundred meters away, and it was a woman called Pat. My mum used to just give me a note. 20 whatever cigarettes she smoked. I used to go down there, give a note to Pat and the money, and she used to give me to come back. Obviously, you can't do that nowadays because all that trust has gone in this day and age. But I remember we were coming back from the pub, and me and my girlfriend at the time, I say girlfriend, we were only young kids. We heard sort of like this. It was sort of like someone running towards you, but it sounded more than one person. So we thought it was like, oh, someone chasing after us from the pub or something like that. Turned around, there's nothing there. And it was quite dark. I remember there was a moon out. It was dark. But we heard this running up behind us. And it was only sort of like 15, 20 feet away. Turned around, there's nothing there. As soon as we turned around, it had stopped. But not to the point where someone stopped and jumped in the undergrowth because no one was that quick. Anyway, so she looked at me and she went, I'm scared. I said, let's do a little run. Let's do a little jog. A jog down there. And as we were jogging down there, you could hear the footsteps behind. Span around, nothing there. I know the second time I sort of spun around, it you know what I mean? That was sort of the last we'd heard of them. So we sort of, there was a couple of miles back to where we were going anyway. We were sort of like an easy jog there. she didn't want to get left alone. As a young kid, you always have that sort of like,
Oh
that
yeah.
little dickhead mentality. I'd like sprint ahead. Oh, he's coming! He's gonna get you! And then she'd fucking scream and start crying.
Easy day, brother. Easy
Yeah,
day.
yeah. And then obviously, no, it's okay. I'm here to protect you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Squeezing the old boob and all that stuff.
Oh
No, but
yeah.
yeah. Well, it's strange. The all strange things that you just remember in your past that you have no sort of recollection of until you're speaking about stuff like that, and you still can't explain it to this day.
Oh yeah. Oh
So,
yeah.
so it's been a good show, brother. It's
I
been a
think
good
so.
show.
So I think so
Just
too.
light-hearted, not so serious, which sort of get me back into the flow of things. So hopefully we'll be able to do another one soon.
Yes. Now make sure to keep your head above the fuckery and the spooky shit. You know, old Shuffy loves you, bruh. Now that being said, folks, thank you for stopping by Kaiser's ghoulish castle for these tales of woe, tales of suffering and fear. And hopefully you got a chill or two, or maybe not. It matters not. So, as you get off my big orange couch and you're heading towards the door, I'll slowly raise the drawbridge as you meander on out of Kaiser's Castle. With that being said, shuff out.